Okay, without further ado, we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight for this online meetup, Alumni Families Talk Rustic. My name is Jessie Wachter. I'm one of our global programs advisors for Rustic Pathways. I currently reside in Denver, Colorado. It's a beautiful day outside today. I have been with Rustic for about 10 years now. I'm just about to hit my 10-year anniversary. And I have led programs in about 10 different countries. I'm actually formerly the director of our Tanzania program, so those programs are always dear to my heart. But I'm always happy to speak with any families about any of our global programs, and super excited for tonight. We've got a fantastic panel. But before we get started, I want to go over a little bit about what we will cover on this call. Thank you again for everyone joining us. As we proceed through the presentation, just know that you can use the chat feature if you scroll down a little bit on your screen to enter questions. I have one of my fantastic colleagues on tonight behind the scenes. Her name is Emily, and she will be answering questions as she's able to get through them during the presentation. If we don't get to your question, never fear, we will have a question and answer section at the end of the presentation. So we will try and get to as many questions as we can to the during this presentation or during that answer question section at the end of the presentation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Rustic if this is new for you. We're going to talk about our no stress travel policy. I will introduce our fantastic panel, and then we will have that question and answer session at the end, as I mentioned. A little bit about Rustic Pathways, a real quick introduction for those of you who are new. At Rustic Pathways, we really truly see ourselves as the intersection between education, travel, and philanthropy. We really take a lot of pride in giving our students the chance to share in a shared humanity and have these travel opportunities take them around the world to open their eyes to all sorts of experiences and broaden their horizons. So this is a chance for your students to get out before they are making really important decisions in their lives, in their college careers, or in their professions. So this is a great place to start. We have what we call at Rustic Pathways a no stress travel policy. This is for anything that happens to come up before you travel with us. So we know at Rustic Pathways, kids are busy, life gets in the way, you may have a family emergency that comes up, you may get into that championship game of your soccer tournament you weren't expecting, and you aren't able to travel with us. What the no stress travel policy is this is basically like a travel credit. So if you have to cancel for any reason, no questions asked, you can always escrow or save that those funds you've paid towards our programs for up to 2 years to travel with us later. Just to keep that in mind as you're making your decision. We know that things come up last minute. Without further ado, I'm going to take some time to introduce our fantastic panel. We have 2 alumni joining us tonight and a parent alumnus. So Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sarah Altieri. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I'm a junior in high school, and I've been on 3 trips with Rustic, all in the US. I went on a Good Works in the Grand Canyon program. I went to Baltimore, and I also went on the New Orleans program last summer.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. And David?
I'm David Greenman. I'm a dad of 3 Rustic alumni. I think I'm trying to count up real quick. Maybe they've been on like 10 or 12 trips altogether, and they're still going on them. And so we've had a wonderful experience. So I'm looking forward to sharing it with you.
Awesome. Thanks, David. And Jonathan?
Hi, guys. I'm Jonathan. I'm from Miami, Florida. I've gone on 2 Rustic trips, one called Summer Camp Leadership in Dominican Republic, and another one in Cuba this past summer. Awesome time. The Rustic is definitely the way to go, and definitely try it out.
Awesome. Okay. So I'd like to start with David, if you wouldn't mind. What brought you to sending your students on an international travel? Why did you want to give your students an international travel experience?
My oldest son at the time was 12, and they had all gone to summer camp. And he actually came to me and he's like, "Dad, I can shoot a BB gun and ride a horse and water ski. What else is there?" And so I asked around town, and a friend of mine had sent her daughter on a Rustic trip, or many Rustic trips, and looked into it and called and learned about it. And so it's just kind of that next step of experience, you know, because he started in Costa Rica, and then he went to Peru, then he went to Fiji, then he went to India and Cambodia. So he really got to see the whole world and all these other cultures. So I thought it was just a wonderful experience to give a kid that much travel, before they get to college.
And it sounds like that's carried forward with your other
Yeah.
kids.
They followed in a footsteps. We always started with, Costa Rica was 2 weeks, and then you get up to 3 weeks in Fiji or wherever, and then 4 weeks if you do 2 trips, Myanmar and Thailand and things like that. And so I now have a junior in high school and a freshman in high school. They're both going to be on trips this summer, and it's they make amazing friends, they see amazing places, and they enjoy it, and we enjoy it too.
And you mentioned that some of your kids have combined trips during the same summer season. Was that pretty easy and smooth process?
Very easy. If you look at it, the flights are expensive, right? Because you're going a long way. So, some trips are only 9 days and some trips are 18 days. So if you're going to spend the money, or this is how I thought, if I was going to spend the money on a $2,000 plane ticket or whatever it happens to be, let's let them get, over there and situated and see both the things. And Rustic has it so you can tie together 2 trips, pretty seamlessly. And besides the Costa Rica trip that we started each kid off on, all the other trips have been a combination of 2 trips.
Awesome. And Jonathan, why did you want to travel internationally?
Well, my family comes from all over the world, and my parents have always taught me appreciate all cultures, learn about them, and it's something that's always interested me. And I mean, being able to travel to places where I never even imagined, places like Cuba. Actually, I have it somewhere here. Oh yeah, here. It's one of the little cars I bought in Cuba with the flag on it, which is super cool. Things you'd never imagine you'd do. I have family from Cuba, which they haven't been in 80 years since they left, and that was something I got to revisit, which is amazing.
Awesome. What was something that really stood out on your trip to Cuba?
Yeah, let's see. I think the culture, because my family is a lot from the islands, like the Caribbean, and I always imagined Cuba to be this place that was so out there, so different, and going there and seeing the people and talking to them, and I speak Spanish, so appreciating that and being able to communicate with them firsthand was something. And I realized it's not as different as I thought. It was really amazing.
Kind of makes the world a smaller place, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And Sarah, how about you? Why did you want to travel internationally?
Well, I haven't traveled internationally yet. I will be going to the Dominican Republic this summer, but I really wanted to see what my country had to offer. And I think through the programs that I've gone on in the US, I've really seen different aspects of the country, like seeing the French Quarter in New Orleans or meeting refugees in Baltimore, not even realizing that there was such a big culture in Baltimore, or seeing the Grand Canyon for my own experience. This is stuff that you're never going to be able to do in your lifetime. And I feel like by gaining experiences in the US, you'll really get to see parts of the country that you never thought were viable to go to. So I think it's really valuable.
Yeah, and you've really done a great tour of our US programs. I think that's a really good point to point out now. This summer you're going to Dominican Republic and you're going to have your first international experience. But your US programs, you said you went to Baltimore and New Orleans and the Grand Canyon area.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite program?
I liked the Baltimore program just because I feel like I really got to see a part of the country and learn about a part of the country that I never expected I would actually love so much. And I feel like through teaching the refugees English, I never realized that there was such a big culture and such a big population that needed the help. And I really love working with kids, and I felt like that was just going to be a great combination of being able to see a part of the country that I never saw before, and also getting able to use my passion and teach kids. So
cool. And what was one thing, if you can think back, before you traveled with Rustic for the first time, that you were nervous about?
I think I was nervous about flying alone, because you have to fly to your city to get to the program. I had never flown alone before, so that was something I was really nervous about. And meeting new friends, I didn't think it would be so easy to make friends, but the program leaders on the trips make it so easy to really create that group dynamic. And I felt like that really helped to foster the strong relationships I have with the friends that I've made.
And what about you, Jonathan? Was there something that really you remember making you nervous before you first traveled with us?
Well, I mean, I've been to sleepaway camp and things like that, so that was never a concern for me. And speaking Spanish, the ones I went to was like never a problem. But I know for a fact some of the kids who went there were a little more nervous about it because they couldn't communicate. The language barrier could sometimes be a little challenging. But really, like I could help, and whoever was in charge helped us out all the time, and it was not as bad as I thought. And my biggest concern was really the accommodations, because when you think rustic, you think like in the forest, whatever, and you think it's a little intense. My grandparents lived 2 hours down the street in Dominican Republic to the one I went to. So worst case, it could always pull me out. But thank God that never happened. It was better than I could have even dreamed of.
David, were there things, if you think back to your first travel experience, that you were unsure about sending? I mean, you must have done a lot of research and you finally landed on Rustic Pathways. How was that decision made?
Yeah, my biggest concern was safety. But the company's been around for a long, long time. I couldn't find any dirt on it, so to speak. I had some, a friend of mine who had sent her kid on it and you just raved about it. So I really wasn't that nervous. I mean, they do a really good, or y'all do a really good job of, the emails that come before the trip. Make sure your kid gets to the airport 6 hours, whatever it was. It's like they really walk you through, and you have a personal travel, contact, and you can email him or her at any time, and they know that you're a beginner, and so they kind of hold your hand a little bit more. And I still, reach out to those people even on my 12th trip now with children, because I never can remember which trip we've signed up for, but they're experts in what they do. And one quick thing, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but when my son was going to Fiji, he was supposed to be in LA either 4 or 6 hours before the flight to Fiji, because there's only 2 flights a week. And we drop him at the airport, and he calls and he's like, flight's delayed. And we're like, no problem. There's 10 or 15 different flights between now and we need to get there. But basically, we were in contact. There's someone in each airport that groups all the kids together. And without that expertise, he really would have missed the flight and then wouldn't be able to go till, 3 or 4 days later. His luggage did not make it. So that made an interesting trip to Fiji. But yeah, the people that you have working for your company are very well equipped to take care of your children. Long answer.
Well, it sounds like it also teaches them that not everything's going to go according to plan. Sometimes your bags get lost. Sometimes there's flight delays, but you're going to get there and still have a good time. So it's all part of the process.
Absolutely.
If you think about each of your students that have traveled with us, can you think of a significant change that you've noticed once they've had these international experiences or travel experiences?
I think they come back with especially if you go to India, you get exposure to certain, depending on what kind of trip you're on, you just see a whole new different world out there. And, we live in the mean streets of West Plano, and that's kind of a joke. It's not too difficult of a life where we are, and they get to see how the other half lives. And what I've noticed, it gives them a very good perspective of how lucky we are. We have running water, we have electricity. So not that they were spoiled, but if you go to school and everybody has a car and everybody has air conditioning, that's great. But it's nice to see that. Or it's not nice, but it's important to see that's not how the world is. So they came back with a perspective of their own lives to be like, wow, we really are lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, what would you say is something that you feel like you took away from your programs? I know you already mentioned within the US, it's amazing to see kind of the things you can do in your own backyard and parts of the country you may never have thought about visiting before. But is there another major takeaway that you have from one of your programs in particular?
I guess really for me was the experience of being on my own and not having my parents around and having to rely on the people on my trip and having to really fend for myself in a way, because I never really had to do that before. And I felt like I really relied on my program leaders and I really relied on the people on my programs to really help me through a homesickness or a really bad experience back home or something. And I felt like that really helped to make the experience so much better. I guess just the friends and lesson I learned would be really getting to teach all these kids. It was so amazing. And we got to plan out our lessons, and we got to, plan the activities. And I never really knew how much went into teaching. Like, it's so amazing what our teachers do every day. And I never really realized that before. So I guess that was the main.
I hope we have some teachers online right now.
Yeah.
Listening in. Bonus points there, Sarah. Jonathan, why would you recommend traveling with Rustic to one of your friends?
Whenever I go to Rustic, I always go alone so that I'm forced kind of to meet other people. And I think that really helps because like the people you meet there are like people who are really involved. They want to help. They want to bring change. They're like active in their communities. A lot of my friends here, they just like want to go to the movies, do the same thing. But the people on these trips are really like the best kind of people that you want to meet. And like, for example, one kid on the Cuba, he was from Paris, and when I went to Paris at the end of the year, I met up with him and we had like a coffee together, which was crazy. And then another one from the same trip, it just coincidentally, I was going to a Model UN conference, and the kid was in the seat next to me in the same committee.
Wow.
Crazy coincidence, but it's the kind of people you meet from all over the world that really want to do stuff and make change.
Once again, bringing the world, making it smaller, bringing it together. That's awesome that you mentioned you had a international student on your program. Right now, Rustic is about 80% from North America and Canada, but we had students from 60 different countries join us last year. So it's always fun if you get the chance to have make new friends that are from around the world on your program while you're out there adventuring. Cool. And what would you say, Sarah, was one of the best parts of your programs?
I guess just the wide range of experiences I got. I mean, from biking the Grand Canyon to helping rebuild a house in New Orleans, like I've got so much experience under my belt, and I never, I went on the New Orleans program thinking, oh God, I don't know how to, do drywall or, nail up a beam to help support the house. But through that, I really got to learn more about myself, and I feel like it's not just you're going on the trip for service, you're going on the trip to learn so much more about yourself and what you can do and what you realize that you never could do before. So I think that's something I really gained, was sort of a new sense of confidence, I guess, which was really cool.
Did you always feel safe on your programs?
Yeah, definitely. In the US especially, they really make sure that we are always together at the same times. We're always, meeting up in a certain area. If we went to a museum, they would say to us, meet back at 1:30 and always go with a buddy. The buddy system they really emphasize, and I think that's really important, especially for international, going to the airports and really having that system in place. And I think that's really something important that they emphasize. I never felt unsafe.
Awesome. And as a parent, I know, David, you mentioned safety was a major concern. What was your experience early on and then throughout your kids' trips with safety?
Never had any issues, although I hate getting off on a tangent like this. Last summer, my youngest kid, who I guess was 13 at the time, he was in the Dominican Republic. This is going to loop back into safety. I guess on his phone, they have things if you get kidnapped. All phones now, I didn't even know this happened, and it sends a text to your family, and it gives the coordinates. And it says something like, help me. And so he had like sat on his phone wrong while he was in the Dominican Republic. I happen to be in Colorado, and I get this text from my 13-year-old says, help, here are my coordinates. So I immediately call my travel coordinator, and he stays on the line with me because I was panicked. I'm like, oh my God, my kid's been kidnapped. And within about 6 minutes, we had reach the trip leader. They always have a phone, and there's always a way to connect them in emergencies. And I was able to talk to the trip leader and then actually talk to my son. And, so 10 minutes of panic, but it was never a big deal. Even if they're halfway across the world or all the way across the world, they're in good hands. So we never had any issues with not feeling safe at all. And the kids never had any issues. They didn't come back and say, oh, this was really scary or that. They just loved it.
You've got that support system in place. And I'm glad you mentioned our PTAs a couple times now, because our PTAs are personal travel advisors. They're attached to your account. You'll have their direct contact details, email, and phone number. You can avoid all those prompts when you call into the main line. And they're specifically there to help with any questions that lead up to the departure. And even while your student's traveling, you can contact them at any time. So I'm glad you've put them to good use.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I know I want to save some time at the end of this presentation for live questions and answers for you guys. So I do want to do a little brief presentation on how to enroll. We always get the question about like, what's the process? And essentially, once you've chosen your program, which I did want to ask the students kind of how you selected your program. I know there's a lot to choose from, and it's always one of the hardest parts. But once you do select that program, there's a little enroll now button in the top right hand corner of the website. Click that. It's a pretty straightforward application process. Automatically receive an email that lets you know you reserved that spot. And then within a few business days, 2 to 3 usually business days, you'll hear from your personal travel advisor with a welcome letter, and it'll have access to your portal. That's where we'll have a ton of information, including your medical forms and your flights and all that jazz. And again, you'll have that PTA. If this all sounds like it's a lot of information, we promise we make it a smooth process, and you'll have that travel advisor to reach out to if any questions. Obviously, give us a call if there's any questions. We will actually have some staff available after this presentation. If we don't get to your question, we are happy to give you a call either this evening or tomorrow. There's a little function in the bottom of your screen that says raise your hand. So if you click that raise your hand, we will have someone give you a call this evening or tomorrow, whichever you prefer, to answer any of your last minute questions so that you can use that, you can enroll within the next 48 hours. And now, without further ado, we've got some live questions and answers. Give me 1 second, we'll pull those up and see what we've got. Feel free, there's a chat function. If you haven't already put your questions in throughout the presentation, you can do that now. We'll have Emily behind the scenes, and then we've got our panelists as well. While we're waiting, Jonathan, how did you select your programs? I know there's a lot to choose from. It can be kind of overwhelming sometimes.
Well, the first year I did it Dominican Republic, I thought it was convenient. My grandparents were not too far. So like I said before, worst case, I could always escape. But after that, I heard about a program in Thailand, which was the furthest I could probably get. And I've been begging my mom to do it ever since. And she said, no. She said, you're crazy. It's called Come With Nothing, Go Home Rich. It's one of the rustic programs you can go on. You take like 5 items and you disappear. That was the one I was dying to do. My mom said, you're crazy, no way. So I went to Cuba, a little closer, still kind of different, but closer. And finally this year, I convinced her to let me go. To
Come With Nothing.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That's one of my personal favorite programs. I will make a note to all those parents out there, you don't disappear. No. But you are challenged to take 5 personal items with you and nothing. And we've actually had students that have taken the passport and their clothes on the back, and that's how they've started the program. So it's definitely one of the more extreme intensive service programs we offer. But Jonathan, I didn't know that you were heading off that way. That's going to be super exciting for you. You're going to have a great time.
Definitely.
David, can you explain a little bit more about how you connect programs, combined programs? You said some of your students have done multiple trips in one summer.
Yeah, so we kind of narrowed down and we're like, oh, Thailand looks great. You know, I've never been to Thailand. And so you just look at the different programs, and I think on the website it says, it's even suggests programs that work well connecting. And so, you know, sometimes there's like at the beginning and end of each program, you kind of go to like a base house or a hotel or something like that. And so some of the kids go home, and the new kids come in for the second or for the beginning of their trip, which happens to be the middle of your trip. And it's very seamless. So we've connected on almost every one of our trips. So, you know, pretty easy. You just look at what you want to do. Like, I always wanted the kids to do some sort of service work on maybe the beginning of the trip, and the second part of the trip would be less service and more fun and adventure kind of thing, kind of as a reward. And so that's worked well for us. Yeah,
to kind of balance it out. And Rustic Pathways, as a note, will manage all of the travel in between. All programs within a given country begin and end on the same day in the same city. So it's super easy to connect. For example, 2 programs in Costa Rica, they will actually end up exactly where their next program will take off. And when you're looking at the dates online, they may seem to overlap because they include travel time from the US, but if a program, for example, ends on July 10th, it will actually likely end on July 9th or 8th in country. So you can take that as your start date. And likewise, your next program will begin on that. So they look like they overlap a little bit, but you can take off that travel time. A question for all of you, for the students and for your kids, David, did anybody have food allergies or specific dietary needs that needed to be met?
Luckily, my children don't have any food allergies, so I told them to try eating the crickets in India or wherever, or Thailand, or what, try everything. Who knows when you'll get back to those places? And they told me they did. I'm not sure if they're just pulling my leg, but yeah, we were okay on food.
Nah, no allergies here either, but the counselors are always on top of that. They always make sure you're going to the bathroom and like healthy and in good shape, and if not, they'll call somebody, and they're always on top of that, so there's no concern there.
Yeah, I like to echo what they're all saying. I have no food allergies at all, but especially being in the US, the food options are obviously a lot more normal, what we would call normal: pasta, chicken, meat. So it's not anything out of the ordinary if you go on a program in the US. So.
Did you have the crawfish in New Orleans?
Oh yeah.
Sarah?
Yeah.
You tried the crawfish? Oh, sorry, I can't see your screen anymore. Awesome, I love hearing that. We are able to accommodate most allergies and most dietary needs. It does depend a little bit on the destination. I always say, for example, if you're looking to travel to Mongolia, super meat heavy diet, it is a little bit more challenging to accommodate vegetarians and vegans. Vegetarians possible, vegans will be tough, but if you ever have any questions about any sort of dietary needs, whether it's celiac disease or preferences on food, peanut allergies, for example, give us a call and we can kind of help direct you what programs might be the better fit, but we can accommodate most things on most programs. In your experience, it sounds like we touched base on it a little bit, but we have another question about whether students travel more on their own or with friends.
I'll jump in there. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
I personally love to travel on my own just because I feel like I got to know everyone on my trip so much better, and I feel like if I brought a friend with me, I wouldn't get the same experience because I would be so busy trying to make sure they were okay, they were entertained. I didn't really want to deal with that, so I felt like by going alone, especially the first time, I know it's really tempting to go with a friend your first trip, but I feel like by going alone, your bonds with the people on your trip are going to be so much stronger. So I highly recommend going alone.
Yeah. And on the first trip I did, there were a pair of siblings there actually, and like a cousin. So, I mean, people travel with whoever they want. I went by myself also, like Sarah, to try to meet other people. And you really do get close, regardless of if you come alone or not. On the second trip, I actually brought a family friend. And by the end of the trip, it was amazing. We were all very happy and very close. So it all depends on you, but definitely push yourself to whoever is going to try to meet other people, regardless of who you go with.
My kids all traveled alone, and I think that's a great way to do it because, like Sarah said, you really I think most of the students that do this go without a friend, and everyone's in the same boat of, hey, I don't know anyone on this trip. But the friendships that my kids have made, they've kept in touch with these people, and ended up actually meeting on other trips later. So that kind of, and two of them ended up at the same college as my son. So traveling alone was definitely how I'd recommend it, because everyone's in the same boat and everyone's got the same sense of adventure. So that'd be my advice.
Awesome. Yeah, we get that question a lot. I feel like from my perspective, when working with families, a lot of people think they're going to be the only one traveling on their own when actually the majority do travel on their own. We certainly have, as Jonathan mentioned, we have siblings that'll come or friends that met on previous trips, but definitely not going to be the only one if you're traveling on your own. And we have quite a few questions coming in about our cell phone policy at Rustic Pathways. I can speak from Rustic. We really do try and encourage students to be as disconnected as possible. It's a really rare opportunity these days, and we want you to get the most out of your experience and fully be present. That being said, we don't disallow cell phones entirely. We do find that they're useful, especially on travel days. A lot of students like to use it as their camera. It does depend a little bit on the itinerary, as some programs will have a day or two of Wi-Fi access or something like that. Some programs will not at all. Jonathan will be fairly disconnected most of his trip, which I think is kind of something he's looking forward to. But from a parent's perspective, David, did you find that you were concerned? Did you want them to have internet access, or was it kind of a nice break for them to sort of get out in the wilds?
No, we definitely encourage them. I mean, they had the phone, right, to travel with. And, 10 years ago, whenever we started, they wouldn't use it. We encouraged them not to use it. I think it's really healthy, especially kids today, to put the phone away. And they, if they know that in the case of emergency, they can get you, which they can, either with their phone or the trip leader's phone or whatever, it's a nice break. And I think it shows, forces a little independence. And, I wish even if they're not on the trip, maybe we go it all unplug for a month at a time. I think it's good and healthy. So I think, yes, they'll have their phone, and yes, there'll be places where they have internet access. I got a text from my daughter. She had broken a camera and she wanted to see if she could spend $20 to buy another camera, or whatever it was. But, and then we talked to her 2 weeks after, and then, but yeah, it's nice for them to not have their phones or to not use their phones.
What about you guys, Sarah, Jonathan?
I personally, being in the US, it's obviously readily available to us to Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And our program leaders were super strict, especially in the US, to really not be on our phones during meal times, discussions, community service. The only times we could really use them were the morning before breakfast or the evening, like before we were going to go to bed, during like our free time. And that, I think, really helped me, again, to just get to know the community service project, the people I was with, the program leaders. I think that's really valuable. And while I still had the phone with me, I feel like I don't necessarily need it nowadays. I feel like it's a nice tool, but it's not a necessity like I once thought.
Right. Well, at least with regards to Cuba, and at least like certain parts of the Dominican Republic, it was very hard to come by any internet access. And my phone was really there as an iPod. I'd have my speaker there and we'd just kind of listen to music. That was the main thing I'd do. And a camera. I'd take a lot of pictures and come back, show the entire world. But otherwise, not really that much internet use. I didn't feel like I was missing it at all either, because you're so busy, you're doing so much that there's no point in really having it.
Perfect. There's a question about whether you're able to get to know the people on your trip beforehand. And speaking from my perspective, I know that some students have started chains on Facebook or Instagram on their program page, or photos that represent their program. For the most part, we don't connect students beforehand. We like to have the students meet at the airport and start their adventure together. Social media can kind of drum up some preconceptions that aren't always the right. They aren't always right. So we don't do that from our perspective or from our side, but some students do that on their own. Did you guys meet anybody before you traveled?
No.
I knew one person on the second trip, but otherwise, no.
Okay. And you met at the airport or in country?
Yeah.
And you found it was pretty easy to sort of get to know everyone at that point?
Yeah, it was so easy. I mean, the first night you're all together and you're just, basic orientation type stuff, like what Rustic is about, and you really get to, play bonding games and really get to know each other more on a deeper level. And I feel like throughout the trip, that first night and meeting everyone initially in the airport really sets the tone. And I feel like if I met any of these people beforehand, I would have had a different perception of them, and the trip wouldn't have been the same if I hadn't met them on the first day. So.
And they're all wearing the same t-shirts.
Oh, yes.
It's easy to identify them.
Yeah, they're cool t-shirts. They're comfortable.
Yeah.
We like hearing that. So I've got a couple other quick questions here. What is the average age on a 14 to 18-year-old trip? So a trip that's open to all high school students. In general, I would say usually most programs will have a pretty good mix of ages. Sometimes it looks like a bell curve with most of the students being 15, 16, 17. There are some programs that tend to skew younger and older, so please feel free to give us a call if you're looking specifically for a program for a freshman or a senior that doesn't want to travel with younger students. We can kind of help guide you, but for the most part, we usually get a pretty good mix of ages. Boy-girl ratio, I don't know what you guys experience on your trips. Our company is usually 70-30 or 60-40 any given year, which is girl-boy, but every session varies, and we find that some sessions of programs will have a majority of boys and others will have a majority of girls. So again, that's something you can definitely give us a call about. One more quick reminder, we will have staff in the office if you'd like to ask these questions tonight while they're fresh on your mind. And then finally, what happens when someone gets sick? I don't know if anybody here wants to share a story. I don't know if you were ill while you were on a program. All of our program leaders, full-time staff, have wilderness first aid or wilderness first responder certifications. So they're able to handle most things that would happen on a trip. If it is something where they need to visit a clinic or a hospital, you would obviously as a parent be notified immediately. David, did you have anything like that happen?
No. You mean, yeah, I mean, we were fortunate, and no serious things while they were on any of their trips, or at least not that wasn't handled. We never got a call about a kid, thankfully.
Great. Yeah, with as many programs as your kids have been on, that's great. And I would say that's pretty normal. We are, like I said, able to handle most of the general things that would happen, stomach bugs and scrapes and bruises and things like that. But we absolutely have had we have had a couple of appendicitis on programs and stuff that are more serious. And we have systems in place and risk management policies in place to cover those things. So always happy to go into that into more detail. We are a little bit past, about 10 minutes past our half an hour mark. I just want to say thank you again for joining us. Thank you so much for our fantastic panel. I really appreciate your time and your genuine fun answers. We will have staff on for questions, and we also have people on call the rest of this week. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.